Life on a submarine is very interesting. In my Navy career, I had occasion in one 2.5-year period, 3-year period, to make 6 patrols in submarines. Most of them were between 2 and 3 months in length. Think about that. Think about life in a long tube with 120 other men for 3 months. Unlike the movies you see, where submarines constantly pop up and open the hatches and do whatever they're going to do on the surface and then go back down, that's not the way life on a submarine really is. Once you submerge, you stay down for 2.5 to 3 months. The air that you breathe is recirculated air, not fresh air. The water that you use is recirculated water, not fresh. 120 men on that boat. Last year they started letting women on the boats. So now it's 120 men and women on the boats. There's a common expression on submarines. There's no such thing as a secret on a submarine. You tell a secret up forward and within seconds it's back aft. That's your life, that's your world, enclosed in that long metal tube. You eat there, you sleep there, you work there, you play there. Everything self-enclosed in that tube. After a length of time, usually doesn't take very long, all you can begin to think about is life outside that tube. There's no mail. There's no phone calls. There's no text. There's no internet. There's no Google searching. There's no YouTube. Your life is in that tube. You don't know what's happening to the rest of your family. You don't know how your children are doing. You don't know what pressures your spouse is under. You do not know. And sometimes that's the hardest part of life on a submarine. You are totally cut off, self-enclosed, and that's your life. And then comes the day. 3 months later, rumor has it that you've pulled into port. You can't tell because you can't see. And then someone cracks the hatch. And I have to tell you that usually the trips I was on, we were pulling into Scotland. And many of us would jam around underneath that hatch and wait till we sent one of our guys up to open it up. And usually in Scotland, it was raining. And we didn't care. Because that was the first fresh water we had seen in 3 months. Let it be. That was the first fresh air we had smelled and inhaled in 3 months. And I have to tell you, I was surprised at this when I first went out. There were actually some members of the crew that were a little hesitant about getting off, because our lives had become so focused on that life inside that the idea of walking up through that hatch and out into the bigger world was kind of scary. It took most of us at least a week or two to get our land legs back, because we had spent 3 months on a submarine. What's this got to do with Pentecost? I submit to you that the disciples, from Good Friday on, have been living in a submarine. They went into an enclosed space, that upper room that was locked, and cut themselves off. Christ would come to them, but they stayed behind the locked doors. Even when Christ took them out and ascended into heaven, what did they do? They went back. And they got back in that locked room. We see a group of early Christians who were afraid of what all of this was going to mean to them and to their lives. And so they retreated. They withdrew into a life within themselves. They had their community. They were self-contained, just like those 120 people on a submarine. They had relationships, but they stayed locked in. And then comes the cracking of that hatch, and the Holy Spirit fills them and fills the space they're in and the city that they're in. And all of a sudden they're breathing not only fresh air, but the air, the very breath of God. And look at the dramatic difference. The day before, these guys wouldn't leave that upper room. They were afraid and scared and didn't want to be arrested, didn't want to run a risk, didn't want to make themselves vulnerable to whatever was out there. And now, filled with that fresh air of the Holy Spirit, you can't shut them up. 3,000 converts that first day. Peter and the rest of them now out into the world, proclaiming Christ alive again in resurrection and a new life for themselves. I think for us, we should be asking ourselves, have we allowed our lives to become a bit self-enclosed? We have our relationships, our friendships, our routines. We get through day to day, we get by. But the challenge for us is that every day for us is a new Pentecost. The Holy Spirit is blowing and saying, breathe in and now get out. Christianity is not something that's supposed to be kept enclosed in some safe environment, recycling it over and over again. Christianity is to be lived in the world with the flame and the power of the Holy Spirit. Life on a submarine can be interesting. Life in the Spirit is miraculous. Live Pentecost.